Is your ego costing you money? On this episode of Driven Too Far, we're talking about how checking your ego at the door is the key to sound business decisions. Hello, I'm Andrew Winkler with Chief Carriers, and this is Driven Too Far, the truth about trucking, a podcast that helps over-the-road truck drivers balance career and family. Welcome back to Driven Too Far. On today's episode, we're going to take a deep dive into something that affects all of us in the trucking industry, and that's egos. Whether you're a dispatcher, safety director, owner, operator, driver, it doesn't matter. We all have egos that can get in our way and cloud our judgment from time to time. So what is an ego exactly? Well, it's just kind of a self-inflated sense of worth, if you will. And it seems to kind of strike us a lot of times when we get maybe a promotion, or maybe we've bought our first truck and we move from company driver to owner operator. All of a sudden, we feel more important than we did, and we're not. The way we start to come off and work with people changes, and those people notice that. Well, that's your ego coming out. I'll kick it off with a few examples just so you kind of follow me a little bit and some stories here maybe. Years ago, I was hiring for a safety position and had a really good, fairly young gentleman that was a company driver. Seemed like he had a really good head on his shoulders, smart guy, pretty sharp stuff, and kind of interviewed him a little bit and ended up hiring him for that safety role. Boy, what a nightmare. Not that he wasn't capable of doing the job, still a smart young man, but did it go to his head? It absolutely did. And that was probably the worst part of having to deal with that, was having to continue to coach him and bring him back down to earth a little bit. And he was instantly went from driver to an office position with a little bit of authority, and he was going to fire everybody. He was going to take care of all these people and teach them how to do it right and stuff. But and maybe it was a maturity issue more than anything, and it probably was. So there was a lesson in it for me as well. But working with them and coaching them over time, did they get better? Yeah, I would say they did. I think they've probably excelled at the career they're in, and they've done a fairly good job. Is the ego still there? It is, and it's really noticeable, unfortunately. I think that ego, like we say, clouded some judgment, probably got in the way, and probably terminated a lot of drivers over the years that shouldn't have been. Most of those drivers could have been very coachable. If they had an incident or an accident or whatever the issue was, we certainly could have taken some time and figured all that out and retained those valuable employees, and we didn't. So, like I said, that was probably a lesson for me earlier in my career. When you go to promote somebody, you really need to think that through and think about their personality and how that's going to change and how that's going to impact your overall business. Probably the other one that I see more often than not, you've heard me talk about running lease purchase programs. So we take company drivers, and a lot of them for the first time are going to jump into a lease purchase, become an independent contractor, buy their very first truck. They're starting their own small business. We put them through a lot of education to do that and try to help them, get them set off on the right foot. But man, do you see the egos come out with those guys. And maybe not right away. And even though we talk about it through the education process, we say, hey, listen, one of the things that changes when you go from a company employee to an independent contractor is we can no longer tell you what you need to do, right? So as an owner op, we offer them loads. They can accept ones they want, ones they don't want. They have the right of refusal. They don't have to work. They can take as much time off as they want, in theory, and as long as they're still making their payments, of course. But it's a hard one, because it's no matter, even though you warn them of those things and you try to educate them of how their decisions can affect their income, how the ego can affect their income, it still rears its ugly head. It's kind of crazy. One of the first things that an owner-operator might do is all of a sudden, as a company guy, you made him drive to certain areas of the country he didn't particularly care for. So by God, as an owner-operator, I'm not going there, and you're not going to make me go there. Okay, that sounds good. By the way, we have some freight that goes to this area. I know you said you didn't want to go there, but it's the only load we have leaving yet today that can deliver tomorrow. So you can take that load, or you can refuse it, and maybe we'll look at what's available tomorrow. Maybe there'll be something into a different market that you're more in tune with. And this is where they make the bad business decisions, because it's what does that cost you? If I refuse this load today, and if my goal is to make $1,000 a day in revenue on that truck, did I just cost myself $1,000 for the day? Yeah, there's a really good chance you did. Because as an owner, they're probably not going to pay you layover or anything like that if you refuse some loads. So that's where the ego gets in the way. That's where we need to take a step back, look at it a little bit and go, man, I know I don't like Chicago or whatever that market might have been. But if it's $1,000 difference in income for the week, for the truck, for the business, for the family, can I swallow my pride a little bit and probably stomach it and go into Chicago just one more time? I would think you can. But again, it's a personal decision. So what does that ego cost you besides money? Think about cohesion on the team. One of the things you have to do as a professional driver is really build a strong relationship with dispatch, right? They're the ones that are going to offer you loads and try to get you the areas you like. They're the ones that are responsible for getting you home on time, all those different things. If this ego comes in the way and all of a sudden you start turning down this load, that load, whatever load, because I'm an owner operator and I'll have to do it, what is that doing to your relationship with your dispatcher? Are you going to be considered a reliable source to move the freight for that company that needs to be moved? And it's probably a big no. Now, don't get me wrong. I think, at certain times you absolutely should exercise those rights. If something doesn't work for you, absolutely don't like it, New York City, whatever that is, yeah, turn that down. I get it, but just don't make a habit of it. Don't make life miserable for your driver manager who's trying to help you and is really responsible for your income. So you've got to continue to work together and make sure you don't break that cohesive bond between you and dispatch. Missed opportunities and how much are we leaving on the table? Just like we said with the $1,000 left on the table from the day before because you didn't like the area, how often is that happening? And one of the things that if you don't take it, somebody else is. So think of whether it's another competitive truck line or maybe it's another driver within your own fleet, another owner operator, something. While you're sitting there in your truck in the sleeper because you don't have a load for the day, the other guy's, he's moving, he's making money. So it's about those missed opportunities and really thinking about that. Then that rolls over into financial consequences. So if you do it too often, what's that do to you at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and your annual earnings and stuff? Is that going to compound and affect your overall earnings for your family? Absolutely it is. Are you going to have enough money in the escrow to repair the truck when maintenance is due? Maybe not. That $1,000 all of a sudden is kind of a big deal. So don't let those egos get in the way of making poor business decisions. Checking our egos at the door. So remember, this is not just a driver problem or an owner-operator problem. It happens in the office too. What can we do to kind of leave the egos at the door and work together more cohesive as a team? One of the things we try to do is cultivate a culture of feedback. And this is really when you think about the office staff and stuff like that. So there's nothing worse than having a supervisor or manager or dispatcher, whatever it might be, that thinks they know more than you do. And even when you have a good suggestion, they refuse to listen to it because of who they are, because this ego got in the way that, hey, I'm the one that got promoted. You're not going to tell me what to do. I already know what's best for everybody. If that's the approach from the individual, boy, they're sure missing out. But the feedback is so important, whether it's internal in the office, whether it's with drivers or whatnot. But how can we continue to collaborate? Because you see different things than I see in the office walls. How can we continue to collaborate and get that feedback and figure out what is best for overall for the entire company? And I think that comes through feedback and good communication channels. Embrace continuous learning. Whether you're a driver, work in the office and stuff, there's plenty of seminars, webinars. A lot of these things are free out there now online and stuff, but never stop learning. Never think you know it all, because you don't. While you think you know it all and you've always been successful at doing it a certain way, I guarantee there's somebody out there that's probably running circles around you because they figured out a better way to do that. And they did that by continuing to educate themselves and learning. Lead by example. what kind of behavior do you want people to model? So make sure you understand that whether you have a title behind your name or not, we're all leaders in the industry. So lead by example. Admit when you're wrong, show grace, and just chalk it up to another learning experience. And make sure you compliment people when they do find something new or they're right about something and maybe you were wrong. Don't let that ego get in the way and you stomp off and pout, or you're not going to talk to that person anymore. It's like, man, you know what? I think you're absolutely right. I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I learned something today too. So those are really the kind of attitudes that we want to see for growth out of people, whether, again, office, drivers, owners, whatever it is, but just never stop learning. It's always a great idea to focus on solutions and not on blame. And that's a hard one for some people. It's really hard to look in the mirror sometimes for some people, but there's kind of an art to that when somebody maybe has made a mistake or isn't correct in their assumptions and stuff. It'd be easy to point the finger at them. It'd be easier to tell them how they're wrong and they're stupid, whatever it is. But it takes somebody with a little bit of character to figure out how to give them grace in that situation, where you give them an out. You phrase it in such a way that we're not focused on the idea that they were wrong. We're focused on the ideas that were right and how we can all get together and jump on those ideas that were right. So as we wrap up today's episode, I encourage you to think back a little bit and maybe think of a time where maybe your ego got in the way and maybe you were wrong. How did you handle it? What did you learn from it? I've had plenty of those throughout my career in trucking. I was young when I took over dispatch and operations. I was probably 26 years old. And the ego really got in my way because all of a sudden I was managing or responsible for drivers that were twice my age on average, right? Most of the guys were in their 40s and they've been trucking for 20 plus years. And here comes this punk kid in that he's been trucking all of, a hot minute, and he thinks he knows better. And all of a sudden he's our supervisor. It did get to my head because I was one that was going to, I was going to fix these things and take care of these guys. They're making bad decisions and this and that. And thank goodness I had a great mentor over the years that taught me patience and grace with people. And probably the biggest thing was empathy that I had to learn for that. So I've had plenty of experiences myself. You're not alone out there, but just don't let the ego get in your way, because at the end of the day, a lot of times that ego can cost you dollars and money for the family. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Driven Too Far. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode.